So the wars between the Himyarites and the Axumites are part of the feudal character of this early Magian springtime period that map onto the West's early feudal age. He says even the Parthians, 200 BC to 200 AD, who were master horsemen, and their attacks against the Greeks and the Seleucids, and then later the Romans, had a kind of chivalrous quality about them, these master horsemen. And then so he moves on from that to a discussion of the differences between the cults, the classical cults versus the Magian cults. There's a fundamental difference there. He says that whereas in the classical world, each cult of each god was bound to a particular geographical place. And so when cults, the only way that they could grow was simply to multiply more and more of them, since each cult remained bound to its own place. And the individual could worship as many of these cults as he wanted, as many of these gods as he wanted, without necessarily having to be a member of the cult. So they were non-exclusive in this sense. Whereas the Magian church, each Magian religion is fundamentally exclusive of all other religions. And the way in which they grow is simply through proselytizing and expanding, not necessarily through multiplying the way the early classical, traditional classical cults did. So the one who is a member of a Magian church is absolutely a member of an exclusive community. And so he is at war with all the other communities. But this was not the case in the generally tolerant world of classical civilization. And then he says that over time then what happened was that during the syncretic period of the imperial period, the so-called late classical period, the influence of the Magian civilization and its church model began to influence the cults of the imperium, so that they too slowly, from about the 2nd century onwards, until their extermination by the end of the 4th century AD, began to take on the quality of churches. That is to say that membership in one of these cults began to take on the quality of exclusiveness. And he says that Julian the Apostate, one of the things that he tried to do, he was one of the pupils of Iamblichus, who in turn had been Plotinus's greatest pupil. One of the things that Julian the Apostate tried to do basically was to create a church out of paganism, to turn it into a church in which there would be monks' cells, individual cells in which these pagan monks could meditate on their various Neoplatonic gods and so forth. And so he tried to transform it into a church, basically. And then, of course, it was once Constantine converted in about 330 AD to Christianity, and then after him Theodosius the Great at the end of the 4th century began to outlaw paganism. Egyptian hieroglyphics disappeared, and he outlawed all the holidays, all the pagan holidays, shut down the Temple of the Vestal Virgins. The last Olympic Games were finished at that time. He shut everything down, and that was the last stand, basically, after Julian the Apostate. That is paganism's last stand for the most part, the attempt to transform it into a church of the Magian quality. So then he moves in, and what I want to do is divide this into a second section in the next video, where he moves into a discussion of the evolution of the Magian religious consciousness, beginning with the period of the prophets. So I want to move into that next.